special educator, it is vital that we know our students' culture. When we know our students' culture, we can more effectively teach them. There's a wide variety of different cultures. There is American, Hispanic, Japanese, African American cultures, just to name a few. These cultures are what most people know about. But there's one culture in particular that most people aren't aware even exists. The name of this culture is deaf culture.
What is deaf culture? To understand deaf culture, we need to understand the difference between deaf and deaf. Deaf with a lowercase d means to be hard of hearing or to have hearing loss. A deaf person is someone who has little to no hearing. Deaf with a capital D means a person who is deaf that is a member of the deaf community. The definition of deaf culture or deaf community is to share a set of cultural norms, beliefs, and values that is influenced by deafness and uses sign language as the main means of communication. Sign language is the heart of deaf culture. In America, deaf people use American Sign Language or ASL. ASL is the third most used language in the US, and for good reason. Not only do deaf people use it to communicate, but special educators use ASL to teach their students, especially those that are nonverbal, how to communicate.
If there's no ASL, then there's no deaf culture. To better understand deaf culture, I am going to explain some differences between deaf and hearing culture. Hearing culture is simply any culture that uses spoken language and the people are not deaf.
On this slide, you can see some key differences between deaf and hearing culture. Obviously, one of the biggest differences is language. Deaf culture uses sign language as their main means of communication, while hearing culture uses spoken language. Sign language is a very blunt and literal language. For example, a hearing person would sign that person is fat, and it would be appropriate because they are using it to describe a physical bodily feature. While in hearing culture, if someone were to say that person is fat, it would be socially unacceptable because it is considered offensive to say that someone is fat. Another difference is in information giving. In hearing culture, when we meet someone new, we usually give our name and our occupation, and that is it. And we usually do not give out information about our personal lives. In the deaf culture, when they meet someone new, they learn about who that person is, who they know, and they are very free with giving information about their personal lives. The reason for this is that the deaf community is a very close-knit community, and they are connected through their shared experiences, and they try to strengthen that connection through the people that they know and who they are as being deaf.
Just like in any culture, there are appropriate and inappropriate things to do when interacting with a deaf person. One of the biggest things to know about deaf culture is deaf pride.
Deaf people do not view themselves as being handicapped. In fact, many deaf people are proud to be deaf, and it is an integral part of their identity, which means that it is very offensive to a deaf person to say that they are disabled or handicapped. It is not appropriate to call a deaf person hearing impaired, deaf and dumb, or deaf and mute. These titles are very offensive to a deaf person. What is appropriate to call a deaf person is deaf, or hard of hearing. Other things that are inappropriate to do when interacting with a deaf person is to look only at the interpreter and not the signer, to start talking with a hearing person in the middle of a conversation with a deaf person and having the deaf person wait, and to walk in between two deaf people signing to each other. What is appropriate to do when interacting with a deaf person is to maintain eye contact with them at all times, and you can tap their shoulder, hit a surface, wave a hand, and point to get a deaf person's attention.
So that is a brief introduction into what deaf culture is. It is a rich and proud culture and community filled with wonderful and amazing people. As a teacher, if you have the privilege to teach a deaf student, I highly recommend and encourage you to get to know the deaf culture more and to really understand what it